All right, so I probably had upwards of 100 messages on Nate Friedman's new video. And I figured, you know what, instead of me filming it and giving my opinion, and the video would have been like 2 hours long, it was already a long video, I would just get on here and give you my opinion and also provide some more context of some issues. So here's how it goes. Right off the bat, after reviewing the video, I mean, it's clear, guys, right? It's clear. And what we are witnessing is a textbook example of waste, fraud, and abuse. And it's really all fueled by this like cynical marriage between political ambition, private profiteering, and bureaucratic neglect. So the heart of this scandal revolves around how the Commonwealth of Massachusetts under Governor Maura Healey and her administration, what they've done is they've basically transformed what was once a noble right to shelter law into a lucrative racket for the politically connected, and it's being done at the expense of you guys, at the expense of the taxpayers. So at the center of this is the Holiday Inn in Marlborough. It's owned by, this is one of the things that I don't believe Nate covered, so here it is. It's owned by AWH Marlborough Hotel LLC, which in there of itself is controlled by AWH Partners, which is a New York-based real estate investment firm whose founders hail from these like elite circles, having formerly worked for the Blackstone Group and another company called the Related Companies. Now, in 2018, they, meaning AWH Partners, they ended up acquiring the Marlborough Hotel Inn and two other Boston area hotels as part of a value add hospitality investment strategy. And they're operating through their affiliate, which is called Spire Hospitality. The Marlborough Holiday Inn is not alone, okay? 27 of their properties, which they have 39 total throughout the United States, are located in Democratic-leaning states or states that have sanctuary cities, where these similar arrangements are increasingly common, right? Similar to what we're seeing here. And I'm not saying that all 27 of their hotels are housing illegal immigrants, but I do find it strange, very, very strange to say the least, that 27 of them are within the jurisdiction of either heavy Democrat run states or counties or in sanctuary cities themselves. It's a really strange thing. Now, within Massachusetts alone, 3 of their hotels that AWH Properties own, they're in Marlborough, Dedham, and Peabody, and those are all confirmed migrant shelters. So no, these hotels, a lot of people thought that these hotels were state-owned. They're not state-owned. They're privately owned. But obviously, the Massachusetts taxpayers were shelling out upwards of $180 per room per night to a private investment firm, often for these, there's rooms that are unoccupied, right? What's even more egregious, though, is that the state is simultaneously paying inflated rates for the catering, for the transportation, and other services as well, which ends up being a direct pipeline of public money into private pockets, right? And it doesn't stop there, because the nonprofit tasked with the management of these shelters is Elliott Community Services. I believe they are located in either, I think it's Newton, all right? It's run by a CEO who happens to be known as a political donor and friend of Governor Maura Healey, and that is something that Nate pointed out as well. But the thing is, though, Elliott's revenue, this is a problem, in my opinion, because their revenue skyrocketed during the migrant crisis. It went from $135 million to $220 million in just 3 years. That is a massive, massive surge, in my opinion, and I think that should raise some alarms. The state also paid and you know this, they've paid millions of dollars in no bid contracts to their favored vendors, $10 million to a politically connected restaurant, another $7 million to a cab company. And this is all happening right before our eyes. But yet nobody in legacy media is actually covering this. And I feel like whenever it has to deal with, taxpayer money, I would think that they would want to cover something like this, but apparently it is not newsworthy enough, or they are protecting people on the front end, right? But really, one of the most, I think, disturbing things about this entire operation, as pointed out in Nate's videos, right, is this culture of secrecy and cover-up surrounding the shelters. Every single time he goes somewhere, people don't want to talk, right? So he interviewed, what's his name? John Featherson, right? And he claimed, and I've also gotten claims from people living at the shelters of rape, domestic violence, human trafficking. And this seems to be deliberately suppressed by the state officials. Even as local police are they're hamstrung by political mandates not to prosecute migrants or illegal immigrants for offenses that would land literally any other U.S. citizen in jail for a very, very long time. It's a huge problem, right? The shelter, which is a long shot from being a safe haven, is, when you think about it, it's really like this powder keg of crime and dysfunction, right? And again, the media in Boston, in Massachusetts, has really remained silent on these issues, all while the state continues to bill the taxpayers as if everything were operating smoothly. So think about it, right? Think about this, guys. When is the last time you saw anything about the migrant shelters in legacy media here? When? It's literally not gotten any coverage, at least not to my knowledge. They barely, unless there's a story that they absolutely have to publish, right? So I've been doing a lot of deep thought on this, and I'm trying to figure out why, and I'm sure Nate is too. Why would Healey let her administration pursue such disastrous policies and manipulate them? And here is where I think Nate's video makes a very pretty compelling argument. They said something along the lines of this is about optics and it's about political ambition. It's pretty plain and simple. So when you really think about it, what's happening is, by actively recruiting illegal immigrants to Massachusetts and dramatically expanding the scope of, or manipulating really, the right to shelter law, what Healey is doing is potentially positioning herself as this progressive champion for a future national office run. That's what I think. I think Nate thinks the same things as well, because otherwise it doesn't make any sense. But the crazy thing is, when you think about this, if you use some form of critical thinking here, is that Healey is using public funds that are funneled through a network of politically friendly contractors to manufacture this image, right? And I think that's a problem. And this is all while illegal immigrants themselves are being set up to fail, right? They're being set up to fail. So in turn, when you think about it like this, they receive no meaningful path to self-sufficiency. They don't receive any requirements to learn English, and every incentive they have every incentive to remain dependent on the state itself and its taxpayers. I think at its core, this is a abuse of public trust. That's what it is. Taxpayer dollars meant to protect vulnerable women and children are instead being siphoned into this network of private profiteers and the politically connected nonprofits. But again, dig deeper. The real tragedy here is the abuse, right? That's the real tragedy. And this falls on everybody, even the illegal immigrants, because they're trapped in this incentive system. They're trapped in this limbo. The taxpayers are being fleeced, and the communities whose safety and cohesion, that's effectively being eroded. And if this is the model that Massachusetts intends to export to other states as like a proof of concept, I think Americans everywhere should be deeply, deeply alarmed. That's what I think. I also think it's long past due for forensic audits, not just of Elliott Community Services, but of every contract, every lease, and every vendor tied to these shelters. I think the state should immediately suspend payments for the unoccupied rooms and even potentially demand clawbacks for fraudulent billing. Furthermore, the Attorney General's office, if it were truly independent, should investigate potential violations of state and federal law, particularly around false claims and civil right abuses. Seriously. The most important thing here is that the public should always demand transparency. This is public money spent on public policy, and it should not be hidden behind the locked doors of a private hotel. So, to sum it up, what this investigation revealed is nothing short of this systematic scandal. And I think it's one on the back end that's being driven by political ambitions, it's being sustained by corruption, and it's being paid for by hardworking citizens of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And unless immediate action is taken, guess what? This waste, fraud, and abuse, it's only going to continue to happen, and it will spread, and it already is spreading. People are exiting the emergency shelter systems, and they are entering into the home-based program, which, by the way, as you know, they're also trying to increase the spending limits of home-base. And now these people are out in the communities. So when ICE comes, it's going to make it significantly harder to find these people versus being in one location. Whether that was deliberate or not, I don't know, but I've been thinking about that a lot, guys. And it's absolutely astonishing that legacy and local media is not covering this. It's really astonishing to me. And I really do think to some extent, and maybe this is like conspiracy theory thinking for a second here, but I'm also trying to think critically about this. I think that them leaving the emergency shelter systems is a twofold issue. I think that on the front end, they're trying to save money because inside of the emergency shelters, they're spending upwards of $3,000 per week per family. With home base, yes, there is still money that is pouring into that program on top of other things as well. But when you really think about it, at a time where, Trump got into office, okay, I think it was the end of December, if I'm not mistaken, is when Healey announced that they're going to be taking them out of the emergency shelter system and trying to find them permanent housing through apartments. But then she also fast-tracked that. And now the emergency shelter system is closing, I believe, 6 months early. I believe the end of June. So it's really strange when you think about it that after Trump was elected on deporting illegal immigrants, Healey announces they're getting out of the emergency shelter system, which I would think make it significantly easier for ICE to round people up. Now these people are being scattered throughout the communities, yet Healey, Wu, and these other lunatics are complaining that they're snatching people off of the street in masks. Well, guess what? They created the problem, right? ICE did not create the problem. Their political party created the problem that is simultaneously trying to be corrected. So if you're releasing people preemptively, obviously, since they're ending the emergency shelters at the end of June, it just provides more of an opportunity for, let's say, like this facade of not being able to find people because they are scattered out through the community, right? But the facade is that it seems like they're trying to do a good thing. Like, you see what I'm saying here? Like, on the front end, it seems like they may be trying to save the taxpayer money, which is one truth. But the other truth is they're also making it significantly harder for ICE to track and arrest these people, right? Because now, instead of going to a, let's say, emergency shelter, rounding people up, now they have to go out into the communities. But yet they're simultaneously complaining about ICE going into the communities. But the only reason ICE has to go into the communities in the first place is because we don't cooperate with ICE, and they're releasing the people into the communities. You see what I'm saying here? Am I crazy? Like, that's what I realistically think that what's going on. I do. I think that it's obvious, right? Like, if you use any levels of critical or like pragmatic thinking, that's what it is. All right. So I'm going to leave a link to Nate's video below. He does a fantastic job when he comes here. I really appreciate his work. And I wanted to provide some context to the hotels and the ownership group of these hotels as well, which is something that I don't believe Nate really covered in his video. But again, to end this video, I do find it very, very strange that 27 out of 39 hotels are within heavily run Democratic states and or sanctuary cities. Furthermore, and I can't pull public, well, I probably can, but it's easier for me to pull public records here because I'm also in real estate. But it's also strange that these, at least in Massachusetts, these acquisitions happened 2 years prior to COVID and during the Biden administration allowing all of these illegal immigrants to come. Isn't that strange? I find that, I mean, maybe it's a coincidence and maybe their other properties were not purchased at that time. I would have to do more digging into that. But again, this is all speculation here, but it is a little bit strange in my opinion. So that's it for today's video. I'm sorry it's so long. I was kind of rambling there, but yeah, it is what it is. So that's my take. I'll see you on the next one, guys. Bye-bye.